Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and today I'm going to be showing you all how you can install HAN on your PlayStation 3. Now, I do want to give a huge shout out to Team PS3 Exploit as well as their collaboration with Junie who made this possible. I did do a HAN tutorial before, however, this one has been updated for 4.84. Now, before we get into this, I just want to say that this is not a full custom firmware. With HAN, essentially what you can do is some very limited homebrew, and you can do games. So PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 games you can play on here. However, you can't enjoy, the full range of things you can do, such as other emulators and whatnot, and just general homebrew that you could do with a custom firmware PS3. However, the benefit here is if you have any PS3 model on firmware 4.84 or lower, you can perform this. Right now, this tutorial is for firmware 4.84 and lower, but this works across every model, meaning you could do this on the Fat, the Slim, and the Super Slim PS3. This particular tutorial is being performed on a Super Slim PS3, which cannot take custom firmware, but we can install HAN on here. So again, huge shout outs to Team PS3 Exploit as well as Junie, because we're going to be using their tools to make this possible. So in order to do this, what are you going to need? First of all, you will need your PlayStation 3 right here, and it will need to be on a firmware 4.84 or lower. It cannot be higher while we are doing this because this exploit is for firmware 4.84. You're also going to need a flash drive on hand, and you're going to need a PC to download and transfer a few files, as well as having your PlayStation 3 hooked up to the internet. And that's going to be one other thing. This does require PlayStation Network access, so to do that, I would recommend you set up a secondary account on here. I'm going to be doing everything on one account here just to make things easier, but ideally, if you're really wanting to do this, you should have your main account signed in with your main PlayStation Network account tied to it, and then create a second account with a temporary PlayStation Network account, just one you don't care that much about, and from there you could do all of your HAN activating, installations, game installs, all of that fun stuff. So again, I would recommend doing everything HAN related on the secondary account and playing games on your main account if you're going to be getting online doing that, but this does require online access and PlayStation Network access, and that's just to keep your main account as safe as can be. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into this. So of course, we'll need the PlayStation 3 right here. We're also going to need a flash drive, and then from there, let's go ahead and go over to the PC to download what we will need. Once you're over at your PC, go down to the links down below in the description of this video, and it's going to take you to a few websites. The first one here is ps3exploit.com, and the next one is going to be for Han Toolbox. So first of all, with the things that you will need, you're going to need to get the updated HAN tools for 4.84. So for this, you'll need to go to V3 HAN tools, 4.84 HFW CFW, go down to download release files and click it, and download the release file that pops up. Secondly, you're also going to need 4.84 HFW. I did not say CFW, I said HFW. That is what makes this all possible, because we essentially need to install a hybrid firmware on our system. That's what it's called. So here, you can go back over to V3 HAN tools, 4.84 HFW CFW, go down to HFW, and here it's going to take you to the PSX Place website where you can download this. So in order to download it, you need to go down and download the latest version of the hybrid firmware. So once you're here, you can go to this link right here, which will take you to a mega link. And once you're here, you can just download this 7-zip file somewhere where you can easily access it. The last thing I would recommend is downloading Han Toolbox version 0.7, and you can just come again to this link down below in the description and click download now. Once you have everything downloaded, right click on PS3 tools and extract right here into its own folder. Next up, get the HFW download, right click and extract it into its own folder. And you should also have your package file on top of that. Now we're going to need to prepare our flash drive. So our flash drive must be a FAT32 formatted flash drive. In order to do that, you can right click, format, And remember, this is going to wipe out everything on the flash drive. So I'm just using a standard 16 gigabyte drive, but this is going to wipe out everything. So if you have anything you care about, erase it. But do FAT32, I'd recommend a 32 kilobyte allocation size. Quick format is good enough, and press OK. And once that's all been formatted, we can close out of here, and there we go. So first things first, we're going to need the release files here. So you'll need to go into your PS3 tools, go into HAN support files 4.84, because we're on firmware 4.84, or we're going to be planning to go to that. Right click and extract it to its own folder. Now go inside of here, copy all 5 of these files, and paste them to the root of your flash drive, like so. And once that's all copied over, we can now copy over the firmware update. To do this, go back over to HFW and get the PS3 update pup file. You can right click, copy, and then go to your flash drive and create a new folder in here, all uppercase, called PS3. And then inside of that folder, you want to create a second new folder, and all uppercase, call it update. And then inside of here, you want to paste the firmware file. Once that's complete, go ahead and click on the firmware file and rename it to PS3 update.pup. That is what it should be called. So that's all done. There's one last file we can get now. Over at your downloaded files, grab the latest Han Toolbox file, copy it, and paste this to the root of your flash drive, because we're going to be installing that near the end. So now this should be everything. You should have the package file we're going to install last. You should have the 5 files that we will need to install HAN, and you should also have in PS3 update your PS3 update PUP file, which is going to be the HFW, which we will be installing. So with all that installed, you can now go back over to your PC, right click, eject this safely, and now take the flash drive out of your computer and pop it into your PS3. Now when you're back over at your PS3, it would be recommended to take your flash drive and plug it into the port furthest to the right. That means you're plugging it into the USB port closest to your Blu-ray drive. If for some reason you can't, you can plug it into another, and you can check which USB drive you're going to be using once you do all this, but just to make everything easier, plug it into the closest USB port to your Blu-ray drive. So with all that said, I have it plugged in here, and I can check that by seeing USB device. And the first thing we need to do is we need to install this HFW. So if you're on firmware 4.84 or lower, you have to perform this step. By doing this, all you need to do is go to System Update in Settings, Update via Storage Media, and it will bring up 4.84, whichever version it is, HFW. Press OK. And from here, it's just going to give you the disclaimer that PS3 exploit has popped in. Press right to agree to it, and then press X to start. This is now going to copy over the update to your system, and it will install it. So just wait a few minutes, your system will restart in the process. Once your PS3 has been restarted, you should be in the same screen, but this will be HFW at this point. So again, that is necessary. You do have to update your firmware to this specific version. Even if you're on firmware 4.84, you have to follow that step. Now, at this point, you also need to get your PSN account set up. So make sure you have a secondary account set up here if you're going to be doing that. That's what I would recommend, as well as the PS3 exploit team. And then go up to sign in. And from here, as per usual, you need to enter the ID and password for your PlayStation Network account. Now, I would not recommend having sign in automatically, but I'd recommend having save password just in case. It just makes things easier. So just click sign in. Once you've signed in, you need to go to account management, go over to system activation, PS3 system, game, activate system, and congratulations, your system is now activated. So that's going to be another necessary step. You have to activate your system with the account that you're going to be using. Now we can continue on to the actual installation of HAN. So to do this, let's press X to get out of here. And the first thing we will need to do is go to the internet browser. Once you have your internet browser set up here, press the start button and then change the website to ps3exploit.com because we're going to be manually going to that. You're going to now get this notice saying that you can install your HFW. We've already done that, so you can press OK here. And now at this point, there's a few options I recommend you do. Press the triangle button here, and I'd recommend going to Tools, go over to Homepage, and click Use Current as the home page, and press OK on that. I'd also recommend go to Tools again, and let's delete our cookies, delete the search history, and finally delete cache. And I guess if you want to, you can also delete authentication information. I haven't done anything on here, but that's just to get rid of everything. I'd now recommend at that point close out of your browser, and the reason why we had to do all that is to essentially have our browser open up in the cleanest environment we can get it to get to this page. So now at this point, whenever I open up the browser, it automatically takes me to this site. So with that all said, you can press OK here, and now you're going to need to dump your ACT and IDPS files. This is your activation file and your ID essentially for your unique system. You have to have both of them. They are unique per system and per activation. So you are going to have these two. These are two extremely important files if you want to continue on and do anything worthwhile with HAN. So to do that, you just need to come up here to the top to V3 HAN Tools, 4.84 HFW CFW, and go to ACT IDPS Dumper and press X. It's going to tell you here that this will require 4.84 HFW, which we have. Press OK. And what I would recommend you do is press the L3 button, come over here to the original page, press triangle, and close out of it. So that way we only have one page open at a time. So now from here, if you pick your USB drive, I've already picked dev USB 0 because it defaults to that, and that is the USB drive furthest to the right on your PS3. But if you're using another port, you're just going to figure out which one it is right here and select it. For me though, I already know it's dev USB 0. You want to keep auto close browser, and you don't need to touch DeX mode here unless you know what you're doing. But with all that said, we have our flash drive in place, everything set up here. Click X on Initialize ACT IDPS Dumper, and wait for it to continue. This could take a few seconds or it could take a few minutes. Alright, so you might get familiar with this page unfortunately where it will say exploit initialization failed. You're going to just have to refresh this page and try again. So press X on here, it brings that up, and just try this again. Sometimes you might have to do this multiple times, and if you're not having luck with it, I can suggest try a different flash drive, try closing out of your browser and opening it back up, and try even restarting your system. But eventually this does work. But this is an extremely important step that we have to take first before we do any of the fun stuff with HAN. Alright, so third time was the charm for me. I ended up doing this twice and got failed each time, but the third time it initialized successfully instantly. So once that is done, you can now press dump ACT and IDPS. So press X on this. It's going to dump those two files, and you can now close your browser. So you should have those on your flash drive. And before we continue, take your flash drive out, pop it into your PC because we're going to copy those files out before anything happens. So now here amongst all of the mess of files, you can go to ACT and IDPS. These are the two files that have been dumped. Copy both of these and now paste them somewhere important. What you can do is what I'd recommend, create a new folder, and you can call this console ACT and IDPS. I'll even just make that all capitals just because. And I'm going to call mine 4.84 because that's what's been dumped on. So you can paste them right there, and that's it. These two are essentially going to be the lifeblood of your console, and they are going to be used in other tutorials in order to reassign games to your system. Even though that might have taken some time to get these two files, it is extremely important you have these two files and you keep them on hand because they will be needed. I cannot stress the importance of that. Once that is all done, however, you can now take your flash drive out of your PC, pop it back into your PS4, and let's actually install Han. Check to make sure your flash drive is recognizing, and if it is, go back over to your internet browser and wait for the page to launch. Once it does, press OK right there, and now we need to go all the way here to V3 Han Tools, go to 4.84 HFW CFW, and go to Han Installer, and press X on this. Press OK. Just like before, I recommend you press L3, go over to this tab, and close out of it, so you only have one. Now again, same deal, and this is going to have auto reboot set up here. So the first thing we need to do is initialize Han Installer by pressing the X button on that and waiting for this to complete. This might be the same story as well, where you might have to try this a few times before it successfully works. Once this is successfully initialized, you can now go to Launch Han Installation and just be prepared because this will restart your console. That is completely normal. When your console restarts, open up the internet browser as per usual. And from here, press OK. Now for our final step, go over to V3 Han Tools, 4.84 HFW CFW, and Han Enabler. Because we now have Han installed, we have to enable it. So again, just do the same thing and close out of this window. And for here, just do initialize Han Enabler. At this point, we also technically don't need the files on the flash drive aside from the last PKG. So let this run yet again, and it will automatically close once you have the enable option and you click it. Alright, so this took me several tries, but after getting continuous fails, I closed out of my browser, reopened it, tried again, and got this within a few seconds. So now, once you're able to enable Han, just click X right here on enable Han. It should ask you to close the browser, which you should accept, and at that point, Han has been enabled. So you should, at this point, have a package manager here. And at this point, you can go to Install Package Files, Standard, and install this latest Han Toolbox. So press X, it's now going to install it from your USB drive, and you should have another option here called Han Toolbox. And from here, I'd recommend checking this out. You can go in here, you got the rebooter, offline Han enabler if you want to do that, and several other more advanced tools that you can mess around with. In short, at this point, you're now able to install your games and all that fun stuff. Now, unfortunately, because this is Han, you are going to have to re-sign your games a certain way specifically to this console. That will not be covered in this video. However, the previous videos I made on Han will be linked down below in the description, and they work just the same for 4.84 as they did on 4.82. So you can follow those guides if you want to learn how you can install games on your system here. And that's about one of the few package files you can really install. This really isn't even homebrew itself, but this is going to be about the closest to any type of PS3 homebrew you can get. So that means you're not going to be able to install anything such as like Irisman, Multiman, or anything like that. So for the most part, just assume that you're not going to be able to install any true homebrew. But now, whenever you have to go in and restart your system, I will show you what you need to do to get Han enabled. So here, once you start up your system, whenever you have Han installed, what you'll need to do, if you have any games installed, you can try playing them, but generally you have to enable Han, and to install packages, you also have to enable Han. So to do this, you could either go through the web browser, or you can just go to Han Toolbox, and you could use either the offline Han enabler, or you can go to Han Functions and press X on the offline or online Han enabler right here. So just press X on whatever you're picking. You can initialize this and hit enable. Press yes. And at that point, you can then use the package installer here to install any packages, delete of course, and you can play your games that way. So congratulations, at this point you have now installed Han on your PS3. At this point, all the files on your flash drive can be deleted because you don't need the update, the package file, or any of the other 5 files which were required to install this because you now have Han installed on this system. On top of that, again, if you want to get to installing games, check down below in the description. I'll have a couple videos linked which show how you can set up and re-sign and install games using Han. So anyways, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too.